What's up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. I'm excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. Today, we have Yinghong on with us. I'm really excited to have her on because she just went through the summer 2024 recruiting process and was able to get a really, really great offer very early on. And so we're sitting here in mid-March, and she's already wrapped up the process. And so wanted to get her to come on here, record for you guys, and just talk about her journey a little bit to hopefully give you guys some inspiration as well for what you can do to help yourself succeed in this process, and share some insights, whatever insights you might have along the way. So, Yinghong, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. If you don't mind, maybe just starting off by introducing yourself real quick to give our audience just a sense of who you are and kind of what your profile is.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Sam, today. My name is Ying. I'm currently a sophomore at Bentley University studying finance, economics, and quantitative study. I think my background is very different from other people because I actually came to the US around 3 years ago as immigrant from China. And 3 years ago, I actually didn't speak English, so it was super, super hard. Yeah, but I did it, so I'm very happy, and my parents very happy too. So if I can do this, I just feel like everyone can break into banking, to be very honest.
Wow, so you did not speak English 3 years ago, you're saying?
I mean, I kind of did a little bit, how the education's like in like mainland China. I mean, you're from Taiwan, but you can see the similarities, right?
Yeah.
So it's very rigid, and they only teach you how to like write, and they don't really teach you how to speak. And so when I first came here, it was a lot of struggle. And 3 months later, after I came, COVID hit. It was Zoom, so it was horrible, as you can imagine.
Wow. So basically, your English, because I've only known you for, a little, I guess it's been like maybe 9 months, right? Like you joined
Right,
like end of
freshman summer.
May, end of May
Mhm.
of last year. And so maybe like 8 or 9 months. Um, so you're saying before you came, so you finished high school in China then, and then
Well,
like,
yeah. So I was in like senior year in China, but when I came here, they kind of like downgrade me for like 1 year, so that
hmm.
I became junior when I first came here. I prepared for SAT. I have no idea what it was when I first came, but it's a mess basically. Yeah.
Wow. So okay, so your English was just like Chinese classroom level, whatever they taught in
Yes.
high school, which is like
Yes.
not super
Regular high
advanced to
school.
be honest.
Yeah.
Um, to get to where you are today, where we're having a full-on conversation in English, I mean, that's pretty amazing. Um,
Yeah.
so are you like
Thank
an
you.
international student too then? Like, did you?
Mm-mm.
No?
No. So I have a green card, so I am not international student.
Okay.
I don't have the money to be an international student, to be honest. My parents, they never went to high school, but they always work really hard to provide a better education for me and my brothers. So just I'm very grateful for their help to join my Wall Street Mastermind, to be honest.
Yeah. Wow. You said your parents didn't go to high school.
Yeah, they didn't, because
Okay.
I grew up in the countryside in China. So for
Wow.
them, it was, a whole different story, like back into the old days.
Wow. Okay. So your parents are still in China then, or did they come
No,
here
no,
with
no.
you?
They're here with me in Brooklyn. We live in Brooklyn right now, so my whole family migrated to the US together 3 years ago.
Wow. Okay. Um, that must be, I mean, that must have been, I mean, I come from an immigrant family too. I mean, many years ago, but,
Mhm.
um, you know, like that must have been really tough for, your parents. Like I mean, they probably don't speak English, I'm guessing,
Yeah, they don't.
and they didn't go to high school, they didn't go to college, and they probably had to work super hard just to even for you
Yeah,
guys to be able to come to the States, right? Because like
yeah.
the
Because
standard
my
of living
aunt's
here,
here.
standard of
My aunt's
living
here,
in
so she
Brooklyn
helped.
has got to be way higher than what it was back in China, right?
It is. They work really hard. To be honest, my mom was in a Chinese restaurant, just like 12 hours a day, and it's very intense. And my dad is like construction worker, but because he doesn't speak English, so he doesn't really make a lot of money.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. Um, and they're helping you pay for school too.
School, I did not ask for help. I mean, they offer, but I said I would take it alone. I don't want to burden them
So
financially.
you took a student loan to pay for school.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
I get a lot of financial aid too and scholarship, so it's not that much loan, but yeah, I try not to burden them.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. So look, I think that's amazing because it just speaks to like how much you had to overcome to even get to where you are today, which is sitting here with an investment banking offer at a top tier firm. Um, because a lot of people think like, oh, investment banking is only for kids that are born with lots of family connections and already super wealthy, or you know, like definitely not someone like you who just came here 3 years ago, barely spoke English, parents, didn't go to college. Like that's just not the that's not the stereotypical profile for someone that breaks into banking. And so, but at the same time, like now that you are breaking into banking, you're like probably you're going to be the person in your family that's the first person to like graduate from college, and not only graduate from college but have one of the highest paying jobs that a college graduate can have. So that must be just very very exciting for your family, I'm guessing. Like what did
It
your
is.
what did your parents say when you told them? And actually, first of all, like before we go any further, sorry, because your story is so interesting, but before I go any further, can we tell people like where you got your offer from?
I got Rothschild New York office for 2024, and it's a generalist program, but I plan to do restructuring and debt advisor.
Okay, so so it's generalist, and you're gonna do both restructuring and debt advisory, and you probably do some M&A too.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think so. We can choose like three, but I am pretty interested in restructuring. I prefer looking at the downside, so
yeah, gotcha. So yeah, I think I saw you were at the restructuring workshop the other day, right? That we did.
uh, I I missed that. I think
Oh, you
yeah.
missed it. Okay, well we have a recording of it, so you can definitely
Oh
watch a
yeah,
recording.
yes.
Um, I'll make sure to share that with you. But okay, but coming back to this, so like you got an offer from Rothschild, which is like elite boutique bank, right? Top tier bank. What did your parents say when they found out? Or were they the first people you told, or like what was their
Um,
reaction?
they were so happy. I mean, they don't know the name Rothschild, but I told them it's a good firm, and then I showed them like how much money I'm making for 2024. They were like, I have never seen this much money in my entire life. That's a game changer for the entire family.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were so happy.
they said they had never seen this much money, or you're saying that?
They said that. I didn't say that. Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. You just told them about your summer internship pay, not even your full time pay.
Yeah, they were like, what? They are paying you that much for junior year summer? That is crazy.
Oh man. That's but honestly, again, I don't want to understate how amazing this is. Is like that again speaks to just how much you had to overcome. Like you have parents that have never seen that much money in their entire life, and we're just talking about your internship pay. And so it's like you are the opposite of what, like, a lot of times people say like, oh, people are privileged or whatever. Like you're the opposite of that. You have to like your parents have to work extremely hard to give you the opportunities that you had, and then you had to make the most of those opportunities that they gave you, and then you are taking out loans to pay for school yourself, right? Like your parents can't help you with that. And then you have to work extremely hard to, overcome the language barrier, like learn how to network with bankers, which is a totally different culture, and then just like get one of the highest paying jobs out there. I mean, like that's that's just amazing. I mean, I'm super proud of you. Um but okay, so you got this offer, you got this great offer, you overcome all these things. um I guess you joined, end of May of 2022, and so at that time, um that was like the end of your freshman year basically, right? That was like the very end of your freshman year.
It's 2021.
Sorry.
It's 2021 summer. So
Oh
it's
no, but
like
you joined Wall Street
7
Mastermind in 2022, right?
2021, I think.
No, no, you
My
joined.
first. Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, sorry, I got confused. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just
I
pretty
know the
much
start dates of
yesterday.
all of our
Sorry.
students. So you
Yeah.
joined end of May of 2022, which was I think the end of your freshman year, right?
Yeah, freshman. Yeah.
It was the very end of your freshman year, basically.
Mm-hmm. The
So
beginning of summer.
up until that point, had you done anything to prep for investment banking recruiting yet, or was that like right around when you just decided you wanted to do investment banking, or like where were you at in the process back then when you first joined?
Um, when I first joined, I knew what banking was. I know like different divisions, what they do. But I did not have any knowledge of networking. I didn't know how to approach it, to be very honest. I got some exposure like prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind because in my school we have like investment banking club, investment club. So I kind of learned something, but they don't really like teach you step by step, because they don't have the time first and foremost. And I knew that I wanted to do it, but I wasn't sure if I'm capable of doing it. So,
Hmm.
and then I saw your advertisement on Instagram. I think is you like talking how amazing Wall Street Mastermind is, and that's how I first knew it. And then I still wasn't sure. I was like, like skeptical.
Yeah.
And I think later on, I think I received a call from you guys. I forgot the guy who called me. That he was, I don't remember the name. Sorry. And
Okay.
then he tried to convince me to join Wall Street Mastermind. And I think I have and then I have a Zoom call with you guys later and just know what Wall Street Mastermind can offer. And you guys offer the program for me, the success program, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as I said, I come from a low income family background. I don't really have the capacity to pay like full payment to you guys
Yeah.
upfront. So I'm
Yeah.
super grateful for the program. So you guys offer, and it seems very tempting. So I decided to do it, and my parents offered to help. And yeah, I just started from there and just watch every video. I actually watch every video you post twice, I think.
Wow. You mean like everything in the module?
Yes, like technical, behavioral, networking. Because I didn't know how to do networking. I was so nervous, like just like the cold calling is scary. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Wow, so many things I want to ask you. I guess first thing is, yeah, I remember, we let you in on kind of like back then we called it a success-based program. I think what we're calling it now is like income share program where for students like you with the financial need, we let you in on a much smaller fee than what we normally charge. In exchange, we just charge you like a percentage of your first year base salary, but only if we get you into banking, and you only have to pay that after you start collecting your paychecks. And then so that kind of like is our workaround for people who can't afford to pay the entire fee up front, and it also incentivizes us to do a really really good job for you because we want to make sure that you get the job, right? But with that said, I still think it's amazing that your parents were willing to support you with this program, because I feel like a lot of parents, I mean, look, every parent's different, but I get the sense that, and I don't know your parents, I just get the sense that your parents are super supportive because based on everything you said earlier, your mom working, 12 hours a day in a Chinese restaurant, probably not making that much. Your dad, being a construction worker, not speaking English, also not making that much. Like, so even though we gave you a smaller upfront fee to come in the program, that smaller upfront fee was probably still a lot of money for your parents, I'm
it
guessing.
is.
So,
Yeah, it is.
like, did you have to do a ton of convincing, or like were they skeptical at all? Because I mean, obviously they don't know what investment banking is. They definitely don't know what Wall Street Mastermind is. Like a lot of times, I feel like parents in that situation, if it's a lot of money for them, they would be almost like too scared to like invest money into something like this because they're worried that like, oh, what if I'm I don't know, what if I lose this money? What if you don't get a job even after I spend this money? Like, what was that conversation like, or what was that process like, and like how were you able to get them to support you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the beginning they were skeptical too because, as you said, it's a whole new world for them.
Yeah.
So I told them that I want to do this. I want to do banking, and there's a great program that is available in the market. And I basically explain how the program works. I pay like small percentage upfront, and then later on, I pay another like percentage if I succeed. And they were like, oh, let me take a few days to think about it. And then I think it took them like a week for them to really like decide to let me do that, because like in the middle I told them I want to do this. And I think the review really helped. So I kind of like show them. I mean, they don't read English, but I kind of show them, oh, Sam, you got this, great review. And I mean, and we have seen like so much past success as full case. So I think that's what made them turn around. And also I'm always cautious, like, so I did tons of research before joining, and I showed them all the stuff, and they trust me, and I trust you. So, it's a
Mm,
process. And I'm just so glad that at the end they agreed to do it
yeah.
for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because you know, I think a lot of students, they want to work with us after talking to us because just like you, they understand how after they learn how the program works, they understand that it's a really good program, and they see all the successful case studies and examples of other students that have done well with this program. And so it's like, I mean, who wouldn't want that kind of help, right? But a lot of times it comes down to, are you able to convince your parents to help you, because you're just in college, and a lot of times people don't, have the money to be able to afford a service like this. And I think what you said is really important, which is they trust you, because I don't think that's always the case with every child and parent. I think a lot of parents actually don't trust their kids. And I think a lot of that has to do with like whether you were a good kid, right? Like if you've always made good, smart decisions growing up and you've always been responsible, then like you have a better track record and your parents are more likely to trust you, versus if you always made stupid decisions growing up and you made a lot of like just like you made a lot of like poor decisions and have bad outcomes, then your parents are not going to trust you as much, right? And then so like even then, so at that point it's like, even if you find something that actually is really good, they're going to be less inclined to believe you, right? Just because they probably think like, oh, you're just being dumb and getting taken advantage of or whatever. But honestly, I think that trust is huge between child and parent. But also the other thing is like, I think you mentioned like you really sound like you really spent the time to explain everything to them, like, because they don't
Mhm.
even know what investment making is. And so there's
Yes.
probably a lot of context that's missing for like, what is investment banking? Why is this so important to you that you get this job? Why do you even need help getting a job like this? Why can't you get it on your own? Like, these are probably all questions that came up, and you have to be able to do a very good job of kind of like pitching the value proposition of a program like this, um, especially for your parents who like this money is not. I mean, if they were like millionaires or whatever, it's like, okay, then who cares,
Mm,
right? But like they're working like these super low paying jobs. Like, this is probably takes them a long time to save up this money.
it
Like,
is.
this is an investment, and they're thinking like this investment has to pay off, right? Which it
It,
did,
it is. That's yeah.
which it did, and I'm super glad it did, because now you're doing super well. And obviously you can, um obviously I know you're super grateful to them, and then you can reciprocate, and I'm sure you're going to take care of them and help them out, and for all the things that they've already done for you. And so that's a beautiful thing, right?
Mm,
So okay, then you join the program, and the other thing you said was after you joined the program, you actually went through everything 2 times, which I
mm,
thought that's very interesting too, because um to be honest, like, we have students that come in and they go through everything one time. I think that's like probably what the most normal thing is to do.
mm.
And then we also have students that come in and then they don't even go through everything one time. They go through parts of it. And then sometimes they say that's enough to get an offer. And then we have students that come in and, to be honest, like, barely do any work. And I never understand that, but I think a lot of times it's like the opposite of your situation, where maybe mom and dad are super rich and they didn't even think about it at all when they paid for this course, and then the student wasn't that committed to getting the job, and then they don't take it seriously either, because to them it's not a big deal. But I feel like for you, that, hey, if my parents are going to spend their hard-earned money on something like this, I'm not going to let that go to waste. Right. And so there was probably no way in hell that you're going to come in and not do the work. Right. But you went through everything
Mm,
2 times because I guess even after the first time, you still felt like you didn't know it well
yeah.
enough, or what was kind of like the rationale for doing that?
Mhm. I actually like went through some of the stuff more than 2 times. It depends, but at least 2 times, I guess. So for the networking module, because I'm just always like nervous about networking, as you said, the language barrier, the cultural barrier, but I just have to push myself to do it.
Mm,
And just rewatching everything, just like in just I'm an insecure person, so rewatching everything just made me like feel safer. So I always do that. And in terms of technicals, I definitely watch more than twice. Yeah, because like technicals, sometimes you remember, but because how memory works is that you forgot something and you have to rewatch it again. And for
yeah.
me, I really know that because you said, I think a lot of people just memorize like 400 guys, right? And when they go to interview, the banker they can tell if you are just like memorizing the
Yeah.
numbers or the formulas or whatever. They really want you to understand. I think that's what like set you apart, from other people. So I always try to rewatch everything and to internalize all the skills I need in no matter it's networking or technicals. I think yeah, it's very important to watch things and over again.
Yeah. Gotcha. So what do you feel like made the biggest difference for you then? Like obviously you went through the modules multiple times and that gave you like all the information that you needed. But I think a lot of people they will say like, isn't all the information out there already? Like, couldn't you have found all the information on Google or YouTube? Or I mean, that's what people always say, right? Like, can you kind of just explain for those in our audience who just, aren't familiar with the program because they haven't gone through it, or like they're having a hard time visualizing what the difference actually is or what kind of difference it actually makes? Like, what do you feel like would have been different if you had done this on your own versus, you having gone through the program and having our help? Like, what were the things
Mhm.
that kind of made the biggest impact for you, I guess?
Mhm. If I were to do this on my own, I honestly don't think I would get an offer. So you are right, like about networking videos and technical videos. Some of the things you can definitely like find online, no problem. But I think what makes Washi Mastermind different is that we really have a community here. Because the technical questions you can't just like watching videos and you think you know it, but you don't. There's a lot of nuances. I always ask like different question to make sure I understand it 100%. So I asked a lot of questions in the channel. In the Slack channel, Daniel just amazing. He has a very unique perspective and he answer a question. And sometimes I have a really weird questions that you can't really find answer online. So I think that is super super helpful. And another thing, the networking module, the behavioral questions, I think is a very, very important module because I really like how Wall Street Mastermind, you guys help me craft my story because I'm not the best writer. It's not my
Mm,
first language. So I have all these like stories, I have like, the immigrant background, but I do not know how to structure it. So I think when I submit the questionnaire, you have a question list to you guys, and you guys really made me kind of like narrow down what should I present to the interviewer. So I think it was super, super helpful because like I wouldn't think of to say it like that. I mean, the content is still the same, but the way you structure it is just so much more different. And technical is really just a like checking box, but behavioral, I think you guys help me find my story. So very grateful for this program, and I think it's a very unique and special program. One more thing is it's a long-term program because it's not like, oh, you get your offer, you just move on from the program. It's really a community. Whenever you have questions, reach out. I think that's what made me like Wall Street Mastermind, and I think that's why it's different from other stuff.
yeah. I think those are really great points. I mean, it's funny, right? Because I think like every time someone says, "Oh, can I just find everything online?" I think some of the information you can definitely find online. Some of the information you actually can't because um, it's stuff that we developed ourselves through a lot of trial and error, and so it's proprietary. Or sometimes like we don't even come up with it, but like our clients come up with something that they try, because like that's the benefit of having over 800 students that have gone through this process. At this point, it's like so many different people are doing different things, and when something works really really well for one of the students, a lot of times they'll share what they're doing with us. Like, oh my God, Sam, I just did this thing and it works super well. And then like they'll teach us how to do it. And then we go and teach everyone else in the program how to do it. And that's not stuff that we learn off of Google or YouTube or any of these other places. Right. So I definitely think like a lot of the information, especially, I mean, depending on what it is, right? The stuff that's more black or white, like, oh, what is a DCF? Like, yeah, of course you can find that stuff online, right? But like,
Right.
but I think the other thing about finding stuff online is that it requires you to already know what questions to ask in the first place. Like, if you're gonna go to Google, you're gonna go to YouTube, what are you gonna type into the search bar? Like, do you
Mhm.
know every single question that you should be asking? Every single topic that you need to learn, every single concept out there. And then like also we all know, we've all experienced this. Sometimes we want to know the answer to a question, and then we go on Google and we type in the question, and then we don't find very good answers. Maybe because we're not using the right
Exactly.
keywords, or there's like not a lot of good websites covering that topic, or but like the biggest issue is still this, which is when you're a beginner, like for you, for example, like you had never recruited for investment banking before. Your parents don't even know what investment banking is. You don't have anyone close to you. You go to a non-target school, like there's no one close to you that knows that much about investment banking. Like, how are you supposed to know all the things you're supposed to search for? Right?
Mhm.
Like you just can't. Right? And so like that's one of the biggest differences between that versus like having everything for you in one place already laid out in an order of like, here's everything you need to know. Here's the order you need to learn it in. And here's how they all relate to each other and their dependencies, right? So also like if you learn everything piecemeal, but you don't know how to tie everything together, that's a challenge too, right? And then I think the bigger thing too is like you said, is the support, right? It's the community. It's not just the coaches, but and you mentioned Daniel. Daniel is one of our assistant coaches who is freaking amazing. Like
Yeah.
honestly, I think he's like, I used to like answer a lot of these questions and do a lot of teaching, and then like Daniel's one of our earliest students in Wall Street Mastermind, like one of our oldest alumni, and I ended up hiring him because he was just always answering people's questions. Even before I hired him, he was always answering people's questions. I was reading his answers. I was like, wow, this guy's really, really good at teaching and like making concepts easy to understand. Right. And and then so we brought him onto the team, and sure enough, like I think so many people have benefited from Daniel's help. And but it's not just me, it's not just Daniel, it's not just the rest of the coaches, but it's like the entire alumni network. It's all the alumni that are already working at these banks. It's other upperclassmen that have already gotten offers. It's even your peers who are recruiting alongside you. Like everyone is always collaborating, always helping each other out. The older people are always, giving back and paying it forward to the younger students. And so you're just Whereas recruiting is typically like a very lonely process for most people, I would say. It actually doesn't have to be that way because you have this entire community, this entire group of people who are in your corner helping you. And like, you don't have to feel like you're going through it alone because there's all these other people that are doing it with you. Right. And I think like psychologically too, like and emotionally that like keeps you going, right? Because and like if sometimes you feel like slacking off and then you go on Slack and you see all these people asking all these questions and everyone's discussing stuff, you're like, okay, everyone else is doing work, like I can't slack off, right? Like and so like that's the importance of like putting yourself in the right type of environment because people rub off on each other and you see everyone else working hard and that forces you to elevate your own game and in turn you get better results, right? um and then the last piece you mentioned too, I think is really great, which is a lot of people think Wall Street Mastermind is like, oh, I joined this thing, they helped me get a job, and that's it, right? Like it is that. Like we are here to get you a job, but like the vision is much bigger than that. Like we're here to actually build this community, the largest and best and highest quality network of young professionals who are all going to be starting their careers at some of the top firms on Wall Street, and that network becomes your network. That becomes a professional network that you can tap into in the future. Like in the future, I mean, who knows what you're gonna do in a long like you might go to Rothschild. Most people do banking for 2 years, then move on to other things. Maybe they want to go to buy side, they want to go to private equity, they want to go hedge fund, venture capital, whatever. Like next time you need to look for another job, like there's an entire, group of people here, like ready to help you, right? Like you want to go to this firm, oh, there's probably someone working there, right? The economy's bad right now, people are getting laid off. You need to look for jobs. Like, okay, there's an entire network of people that are working at all these other firms that you can call and you can tap into. And that's incredibly valuable, right? Because there's that saying that like all the successful people believe in this, but like your network is your net worth, right? And so I know I tell you guys that all the time too, but like really it's the older you get, it's less about what you know, but it's about who you know, right? And so I think that's really kind of what we're trying to build here at Wall Street Mastermind, which a lot of people don't realize, but like we want to help you be successful and we want to help everyone else be successful. And then if we're all successful together, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? Um, but yeah, and then I think like, look, for someone like you, especially, you have such an amazing story. You had to overcome so much, you know, being an immigrant, like not speaking English, right? Like, you know, parents, like, you know, for being a first generation college student, right? All these things, like, there's a lot to work with there. And to your point, like on the behavioral side, people always think like, oh, like I know what I want to say. Of course, you know what you want to say, but for the same story that you're trying to tell, there's like if two different people told the exact same story, it could sound like a totally different story because one person is a much better storyteller than the other person, right? And that just really just comes from experience. It's not because like we're smarter than you or whatever. It's just because you're doing this for the first time and we've had to do this over 800 times and we know what the audience, which in this case is your interviewer, we know what your interviewers like to hear, or we know how they like to hear about certain things, and we know what they don't like to hear. And then so that's what we're here for, is telling you like, hey, yes, talk about this stuff, don't talk about this stuff. And also like, you know, arrange your answers this way, so like say it in this order or whatever, so it's going to sound better or more logical. And like people, I think people pay so much attention to the technical topics, which are really
Right.
important, but they tend to neglect how important it is to really get your story right, right? Because like you said, on the technical side, it's like check the box. Like I'm sure you did well in your technical interviews, but I bet you everyone else that they interviewed at the Super Day probably also did pretty well on the technicals too. Like anyone that gets that far in the process, like they're gonna study the technicals, they're gonna know that stuff. Like that's never gonna be the thing that totally separates you from the competition or like makes you stand out, right? The thing that's really going to make you stand out is your unique story of who you are, what you've experienced, what you've had to overcome to get here. That's very uniquely you. And learning how to tell that story is really what separates you from everyone else, right? Because I'm sure like if you look at, we were talking about this earlier, but like if you before we started this interview, but like if you look at, I don't know if you like met like other people at the Super Day or if you know like who else they hired, but my guess is most of the people that they hired probably went to like Ivy League schools and like
Yeah, that's
there's no one else that was like really from Bentley or, you know, similar
yeah.
schools like you guys for the most part, right?
Yeah, it's majority Ivy school. Like the program, there was a lot of people, and when I look at the names, I would say over 85% target school.
Over 85% were from Ivy League schools.
Target school, not just Ivy,
Oh,
but
from Target
like
schools. Yeah.
Stern, yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? Like that's, I would say usually 85 to 90% of people are from, you know, target schools. Like I was just talking to our other student Jose. He also just recently got an offer, and we were doing his client interview yesterday, and he goes to Florida International University, which is also a total non-target school, and then he got an offer from Centerview, which is like one of the top elite boutique
Oh,
banks, and he said that um, they interview like 30 Wharton people,
oh boy.
right? Like if you go to Wharton, like there's like 30 people that had a shot at getting that job. And then
Jeez.
he was like the only guy from FIU. And then he got the offer over all these other Wharton kids, right? And I think he's just like you. He was like, I think he's only like the first or second person ever from FIU to break into an elite boutique, right? And I think you were saying before we got on this call that no one from Bentley really gets into elite boutiques either. Like maybe there was like one guy from 2 years ago or something like that, right? And so That's crazy. That's like, but like that's what we want to do is like we want to kind of like level the playing field between because there are a lot of really, really good students, hardworking students like you, like Jose, who maybe go to a non-target school, but not because you weren't a good student, but just because of circumstances, right? Like just because maybe you can't afford to pay $80,000 a year to go to a Harvard or to go to a Wharton, or maybe you just came to America and you didn't even speak English. Like there's a lot of reasons, but that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to get into investment banking. But you don't have all these resources at school that the Wharton kids have, or the Harvard kids have, or Columbia kids have. And so, like, how do you kind of level that playing field? And that's kind of what we're trying to do, right? Like, give you all the resources and more, really, like, give you even more resources than the students that those schools would have, so that you can also get these opportunities that you guys deserve, right? I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I think that's it's honestly freaking amazing, what you've been able to do, and I'm just super happy and super proud of you for being able to kind of get to where you are today. But I guess like one last question for you is, do you have any advice that you can share with people in our audience? Maybe like a piece of advice that someone else gave you when you were going through recruiting that really helped you a lot. Um, maybe it's someone like you who also goes to non-target school. Maybe it's someone like you who, gets really nervous when it comes to networking, right? Or just someone who maybe like, comes from like a very atypical profile and had to overcome a lot. And probably a lot of people even told him like, dude, like you have no chance, or like forget about it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to tell people like that? Like, is there anything you can pass on to them that would help them with their own processes?
Mm-hmm. I would say the first thing, just be confident. When you got the interview, I mean, it just means that your resume is already good enough to compete with the Ivy people. That's what I always try to convince myself. Okay, so like all of us got here, and I don't want to feel like intimidated by them, and I just want to be myself in the interview. As I said before, technical is really just a box, and what makes you unique is really about your own story. So just I guess think about what separate yourself apart from other people, and just try to really narrow down the story and present it to the interviewer, and be confident. Like smile, make sure to smile a lot, and be confident about yourself. And it's just like selling yourself to them, and just convince yourself that you are capable of doing anything if you try hard enough. As I said before, if I like look at my background, if I can do it, anyone can do it as long as you work hard enough. And the second thing I would say, be prepared for rejection. It's really part of the process. My freshman, no, my sophomore year, the first semester, I got a lot of rejection. I was very sad because I think the first semester I applied to over 200 firms, something like that. But
Wow.
I got only like 10 interviews or like five. I don't remember how many, but I just like messed up on a few interviews. I remember the RBC Women's Program. I think it was my first kind of like banking interview. I totally messed it up. I don't know why, but I think now when I think back, I think one of the reason might be I was too nervous, and kind of like try to memorize my story, and I wasn't confident enough, and the banker can tell. So I got rejected by the women's program, and I was really sad, at the moment, because I was like, oh, I put so much hard work in. I watched all Sam's video, but why is this not working? So am I doing anything wrong? Maybe I'm just not good enough for banking. Maybe I'm not competitive enough. And so really I doubted myself at that moment.
Mm,
But it takes time, it's the process, and it's really you just need to like keep convince yourself next time
mm,
you do better. And I also got rejection from Fidelity, yeah, like the first one. So yeah, that really made me question myself, okay, why, like I didn't do any technicals yet back then. I was like, maybe. And then when I look back, it's really about not confident enough. I think that confidence is a really, really important to you, and you have to show them you are good enough, and this is very, very important. um interview, yeah, just be prepared for rejection. It's really normal. I have so many other rejection stories too, but yeah, it's really part of the process. And yeah, just so happy to get Rothschild, and I think those um failure really helped me to get to where I am today. Don't be intimidated by them, and just keep trying and keep grinding, and you'll get there one day.
I have two questions for you, was as a follow up to what you just said, because I think that's great advice. One, I think like rejection is like almost always part of the process for everyone that goes to investment banking recruiting. Like we have had students that go through the entire recruiting process and don't have any rejections, but I would say they're like the exceptions and not the rule. Like they're a very small minority because most investment banks, most top tier investment banks out there, you got to understand their acceptance rate is anywhere from like 1 to 3%, like for each company. So that means that, you know, over 95% of people are going to get rejected. And then like the small 1 to 3% are actually succeeding, right? That's why you have to apply to multiple firms, because otherwise like 1 to 3% is too low, right? But regardless, most people have rejections along the way before they get their first offer. And so that's actually very normal. And so I think it's great advice that says like, hey, expect rejection, but like you have to keep going. But like when you're going through those rejections though, especially if you go through rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection, like you said, it's very easy to start doubting yourself, and you have all these thoughts like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe this is just not meant to be, whatever, whatever. Right. So the first question is like, why didn't you give up? And what kept you going? Because I think a lot of people in that situation would give up. They'd be like, oh, okay, I'm not good enough. All right, well, oh well, like let me go try for something easier. So that's my first question. And the second question is, sounds like in your earlier interviews, you just weren't that confident, right? And the interviewers could tell. How did you go from that to ultimately becoming more confident? Because obviously, then you interviewed with Rothschild and then it worked out, right? So I assume you overcame that issue and you were able to present yourself in a more confident manner. Was there something specific that you did that made you more confident? Or I mean, I assume you didn't just like flip a switch and say, okay, I'm going to be more confident now. Like how did you make that transition, I guess? So those would be my last two questions for you. I know I said that was the last question, but now I have two more questions. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I guess the first thing what kept me going, I think the most important thing is motivation, like too much chips on my shoulder. As I mentioned before, my parents they already paid this money, to invest in me, and
Mm,
there's no way that I can let them down, and it is a lot of money to them. And for me, I'm always like a typical good student, and I always try hard. I went to boarding school in China, so there was a lot of like adjustment, adaptation too. So for me, failure is really part of the process, and it takes time. Every time I face one, it takes some time for me to reset myself, but I always like come back and keep fighting hard again.
mm,
And for me, it's just really motivation to keep me going, because I really want to do banking, and I cannot let my parents down, and keep going is really the only way, for me and my family.
yeah, that's man, I that resonates with me so much because I was the same way. Like I
Yeah,
graduated in
I
2008.
remember I watching your story.
Yeah,
I
I
watched the
interned
story of
at
the
Bear Stearns in 2007 for my
yeah.
summer. Didn't That's the worst summer to be at Bear Stearns. Their two hedge funds collapsed, triggered the financial crisis. I didn't get a return offer. I had to recruit for full time, and I got rejected by like the first 20 something firms that I interviewed for. And same thing, exactly what you described. Like, started having doubts, started thinking maybe it's not meant to be, maybe I'm not good enough. But then I just like you, like, I can't quit. I have no quit. It's not my personality. Also, I felt like, and maybe this is a thing with like us both having immigrant parents and things like that. It was like, my parents work too hard. I can't let them down. Like, I got this close. I can't stop. Like, all of those things came into play. And that just like giving up was not an option, basically. And I'm so glad I didn't give up, because I literally, like, I didn't get my offer until I was down to like the very last two firms that I had interviews with. And then those are the 2 offers that I got, right? And the rest is history, right? And so I think that's like, I always tell people, like, you need to know your why. Like, why are you trying to do this? Why do you need to get into investment banking? Maybe it's so like, hey, like my parents work really hard, they make no money, like they sacrifice so much, and I want to make sure I'm successful and make it so that all their time and effort and energy and investment is all worth it. And I want to be able to take care of people I love and care about. Like maybe that's your why. And that's a really powerful and strong why that does not allow you to stop, or it does not allow you to give up, right? Like your why has to be stronger than all the reasons why you could have to quit, right? Like, is you continuing harder, or is like you quitting harder? Like, which one is
Mm,
harder, right? If you quitting is harder, then you're gonna keep going, right? Like you quitting and going back to like the life that you were already in, if that's worse, like then you're gonna keep going, right? So I think
mm,
like that part is like, I completely agree with what you're saying. In terms of the second part about like how you found the confidence that you needed to do better in the interviews, like was there something that happened or something specific that you did to do that, or was that just like, hey, after getting rejected multiple times and putting in more and more reps and just eventually it started becoming easier and easier? Like was that a very gradual process, or was it like there was this one thing that I did and it just made all the difference?
mhm. It's definitely a gradual process because, well, as if you practice more and your story will just sound more fluent. I think one another thing is about talking to your friends. It's very important. For me, I'm not really like outgoing person, so sometimes I tend to keep things within myself. So
Mm,
it wasn't a good solution. So what I did was that after facing so many rejections, I talked to my friend who's also doing the same thing. I have two friends who's also doing similar things with me. So I just like open to them. Okay, so I did not get this. What do you think? And because we did interview prep together, so we kind of like come together and try to analyze. Okay, why? And of course, I also send out email to the bankers like what like why. I did not get any feedbacks, but I still want to try. But I heard some stories that like some bankers actually get back to people. So I guess some people can try to do that if they are willing to share like why didn't you get the job.
yeah.
And yeah, just really about talking to more people. Just it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes. I think
Yeah.
this is when me and my friends build like really, really great connection because I'm willing to show them, okay, I did not get this and I want your help. And yeah, I think
You're saying you guys really
talking to
bonded over that process
yeah.
because you were
Mm-hmm,
being so vulnerable with each other and kind of
mm-hmm,
sharing not just your wins, but also your losses with each other.
yeah.
And that brought you closer. But
Mm-hmm,
also that
mm-hmm,
it sounds like what I'm hearing too also is that as you were failing, you weren't just failing and saying, oh, well, I failed, I didn't get the offer. Like you were constantly trying to get feedback, figure out what it is that you did wrong, what you could be doing better. So you're not just failing, but you're failing forward, basically, is what I
mm,
like to call it. It's like, honestly, I tell people this all the time. Like, if you fail, you didn't really fail as long as you actually learn from the failure. Like, if you learn from that failure so that you can be a little bit better the next time, then you're failing forward. And then eventually you're going to get across the finish line after doing that enough times. Right. But you also, going back to the first point, you have to be resilient enough. You have to be persistent enough to not give up halfway through before you've failed enough times, so to speak, right?
mm.
So I think that's great. I mean, gosh, so much good stuff in this interview. I think that there's a lot for people to take away from everything you said, and hopefully, like I personally, um, already knew a lot of this stuff, but I think for a lot of students that are just going through it now, like this was some really really insightful stuff. So I'm very grateful to you for being willing to share all this with our audience. But just to wrap things up here, I think guys, like for those of you that are still listening to this, if you're thinking about recruitment from banking, but maybe you don't come from like a privileged background, maybe you don't have all these connections, you don't go to a target school, you don't have all these resources at your disposal, you don't have anyone around you that knows anything about investment banking and can kind of like help you level the playing field. um like reach out to us and like see if we can help you, right? And like like we talked about earlier too, like if you're the type of person who like maybe can't fully afford to work with us and you need financial assistance, like we have different things that we can do to structure the payments, and maybe charge you out of your future income or something like that. And only after you get your job, that would make this affordable for you today, right? So that you can get the help that you need right now. Because by the time you can't afford it, like it'll be too late, right? And so like, um, don't let that stop you, right? If you're interested in working with us, reach out to us. You can, do so by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The streets abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to helping you. All right. So with that said, Yinghong, I know we're kind of out of time here, but just want to thank you again so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. Honestly, your story, like we interview a lot of clients, but like my favorite interviews are the ones where we feel like the student was just a total underdog. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we
Yeah.
work with some students too that are like go to like great schools, have really good grades, and they come to us not because they couldn't necessarily get into investment banking. They come to us because they don't want to just get in, but they want to get like the best outcome possible. So they want to like raise their floor and their ceiling. And that's like totally a great reason to work with us too. But like the ones that we really love are like people that come to us because they probably most likely could not have gotten in on their own. And then they got in because they joined the program and it wasn't easy for them to join the program, but they did it anyway. Those always make us feel like this is why we do what we do. So I want to like thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to just play a small part in your journey. And obviously you had to do most of the work and you had to go out and really earn this. But I totally respect and admire how much you had to overcome and all the hard work that you put in. And I think you deserve all the success in the world. So I look forward to seeing everything you accomplish, both at Rothschild this upcoming summer and beyond. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sam, for everything, because I know how much power you put in to all those videos and how you sell the program, starting from like 0 client to now over 800, I think, right?
Yeah.
So
Actually.
that's amazing, and I really like your content, and it's straightforward, easy to understand, and if anyone can do it, and it's always available. And I really like the Wall Street Mastermind community, and yeah, just really, really grateful for this program. So on behalf of me and my family, thank you.
Thanks, man. That means so much. And tell your parents I say congrats too, because like I'm I'm a dad myself now with 2 kids, and I understand what it feels like to want the best for your kids, but um I think, with everything that you told me about your parents, just like they seem super supportive and, tell them thank you for putting their trust in me to help their daughter with something so important, especially when this couldn't have been like an easy investment for them to make. So, I don't take that kind of trust for granted. So, but anyway, guys, we could go on forever here, but we're gonna wrap it up in the interest of time. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. But until next time, all right.